call the meeting to order. And Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call.
Mayor Johnston.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wyrick.
Here.
Councilmember Blatz.
Here.
Councilmember Francina. Here. Councilmember Haney.
Here.
Okay, we have only one item for discussion in the workshop. Do we need to do public comment or do that later in the second meeting?
You only need to take public comment on the workshop item. The general public comment is at the 7 o'clock meeting.
Okay, fine. Okay, I do have, maybe we have first have a staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me come around to the lectern, and I'd like to give the presentation from there. Mayor and Council, I am Steve McCleary, City Manager. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. It's hard to believe it was just a year ago that I stood in front of Council as a fairly new interim City Manager trying to come up with the city budget, and with a year of further reflection and experience, it feels like a much different experience this time. Hopefully the outcomes will be just as positive. So if we could have that presentation come up. It's TV's on, please. Thank you. So tonight, we're really going to give you your first look at the proposed budget for fiscal year 17-18. We'll let the PowerPoint come up here. I don't have a real lengthy presentation tonight, but I wanted to give the council and the community an overview of what we're looking at, where we are, and our future calendar here. And then also for this evening, the council has set aside time to hear from various community groups who would like to come and make their pitch to the council for use of budgeted funds for next fiscal year. Overall, I'm happy to report the city remains in good fiscal health. Revenues are projected to slightly increase next year. I will get into that a little bit more detail in the further slides. We're also looking at a moderate increase in expenses for next fiscal year. The Capital Improvement Fund continues to be a high priority, with revenues going to the Capital Improvement Fund tied to the city's TOT revenues. The policy that we've been operating under has been to divert 20% of that to the city's Capital Improvement Fund, and this proposed budget includes that. We do have some serious and significant concerns on the horizon in terms of the city's budget. Nothing extremely concerning for this coming fiscal year, but there are some concerns on the horizon. I think we've all heard some of the decisions that have come down from CalPERS. CalPERS, of course, is the agency that handles the city's retirement. CalPERS has seen decreasing rate of returns on the funds that they have invested into the market, and as a result, they're seeing less money that they can pay out to retirees. And that means they have to get it from somewhere. So that means they're looking at increasing their rates fairly significantly. Even with the increase in rates, and again, we'll start feeling the pinch on that, not in this fiscal year 17-18, but the following fiscal year. Even with that pinch coming, there are many people who feel what PERS has done is not quite going far enough, and that it will probably mean, unless they get some really good returns and from a robust stock market or whatnot, that they'll probably be cutting those projections even further in the future. So the long-term PERS costs do not necessarily look good. And then the other issue is, I think we're all familiar with how the budget cycles go, up and down and up and down. Certainly state and the federal economy, or state and the national economy seem to tend to follow that pattern. We're in towards the end of what you would probably expect to be an up period in the budget, in the economy. I think the words of Governor Brown in his May budget revise were fairly accurate in terms of feeling that this was really the last year before we might start to see some declining revenues and need to start tightening our belts. And as we all know, when the state starts seeing their revenues decrease, they come looking to the cities and the local districts to make up that difference. We saw that with the ERAF shifts in the 1990s, where the state shifted money from the cities and special districts to the schools. We saw that again under Governor Schwarzenegger when he changed how the vehicle licensing fees were being collected and distributed to local agencies. And then a few years back, we saw what happened with Governor Brown and the elimination of the redevelopment agencies. So we know what the state's MO is, and it's when they get tight, they look to tighten elsewhere before they look to tighten their own budgets. So, and as these things typically happen, it's not just one thing happens, it's that three things will happen at once, and then you're trying to find a way to make it all work. So, but having said that, we did have a good year this year, and we're looking at a fairly stable budget for next year as well. We always track very carefully our big three revenues, which is the Transient Occupancy Tax, also known as TOT, our sales tax, and our property tax. We are projecting some modest increases on those. Each are estimated to end this year with increases over what we had received in the prior fiscal year, 15-16. Sales tax is estimated to reach $1.6 million, which would exceed 15-16's total of $1.23 million, and the expected total that we had projected for this year of $1.27 million. So a rather substantial increase above what we had projected for the sales tax. Property tax increased from the prior fiscal year from $1.67 million to an estimated $1.72 million this year. That is a little bit less than what we had projected in the budget. We had projected $1.79 million, and we're estimating that we'll get $1.72. Fortunately, the sales tax makes up some of the difference in that. The TOT increased from $3.15 million in 15-16 to an estimated $3.27 million, just falling short of the $3.29 million we had anticipated in the budget. And then for fiscal year 17-18, we're projecting rather conservative increases in property tax, sales tax, and TOT. With the TOT, we were looking at a 3%. Now we've moved that down to a 2%, just to be a little bit more careful. Taking a broader look at the projected general fund revenues for 17-18, starting from the large, it's kind of hard to read here, but the large yellow part of the pie is the TOT. So if you follow that around clockwise then, sales tax, you can see another big chunk of the revenue coming in. Property tax is that large orange square, and then other. And then we also added a little slice in there, that's the orange slice. Those are our revenues from recreation. Looking at the expenses, again, if you, with the police, with that large part of the pie there and following it around clockwise, police, public works, something's off on the colors here, sorry. Okay, so, sorry. The big green would be your admin. You can see that's a large chunk of our expenses. Then coming around is the capital transfers. The purple is the CDD, which includes planning and building and safety. And then police is the large blue. And something's a little off on that slide, so I'll have to figure that out. Something didn't quite work on the key there. Sorry about that. We'll get that fixed up. It looked right in my office, I swear. In terms of ongoing budget commitments and restraints, obviously, as you can see, police and public safety is a large portion of our general fund expenses. We're pretty much locked into that with the contract with the Sheriff's Department, so that is a large expense to our general fund. Other ongoing commitments that we have, I mentioned the PERS, which is the retirement. Obviously, we need to be able to both pay into the retirement system for our current employees. And then retiree medical, we have an ongoing obligation to pay for those medical plans for our retirees. And that is an ongoing liability concern of the city. And then also we need to be able to maintain our city infrastructure. And that means our streets, our sidewalks, our roads, and also maintain our city facilities and our city parks and grounds. The current fiscal year, our revenues, as I stated, are pretty near our projections, except for the property tax. We're projecting a total of $9.4 million coming in. Again, that's projected. We won't know until the end of the fiscal year exactly what that number will reach. And the good news was that our expenses came in less than budgeted. $8.78 million was projected, and that's allowed us to maintain our fiscal stability. So we do have a projected balance or projected budget surplus this year of about $600,000. I want to talk a little bit further about that. I think one of the last things that you ever want to do is walk into the room as a city manager with a bunch of politicians and say that you've got extra cash to spend, because I would not say that we have extra cash to spend. It's good news. Certainly, if we had gone under on the budget, we would have had to make that up somewhere. Of course, we adopt a balanced budget each year, and it's always good to be running into the black. However, I would not go out and plan a big party. Obviously, a big part of the city is trying to maintain our fiscal solvency and to be able to ride out the hard times without drastically reducing our city services or going into layoffs. So we do have a general fund reserve, and that's the point of the reserve, to give us that cushion. The reserve policy calls for having to have in the reserve 50% of the adopted general fund budget, which for this fiscal year would be $4.63 million. Even with the projected balance, with the surplus for this year, our projected balance as of June 30th would be $3.85 million. As you can see, that's still $800,000 short of what our target would be for the general fund reserve. So if you think of it like a household, your general fund reserve is like your savings account. And we want our savings account to be at a certain level. We're doing better, we're getting closer, but we're not quite there yet. And then the last part of this, I'm not even going to begin to tackle because it gets into accountant speak and things like that. But and it's a difficult topic, it's a difficult concept, I think, to both explain and also to understand, including for city managers, which is why I'm going to ask the finance director to speak a little bit about the difference between reserves and cash.
This topic is something that is quite often misunderstood by people, and people think that when we talk about reserves that we are talking about cash, and cash does not necessarily equal reserves, especially in any of the funds. And the reason for that is there's a lot of different things. Like for instance, we receive some grant money ahead of time, and that's cash money that we've got in, but that's not city money. That's actually a liability that if we don't do what we're supposed to do, then we have to pay it back. And those are really the major items that cause those differences. But in our case, they approximate. Our cash balances approximate our reserve level, but it is a little bit different, and it's really these prepaid items or various things where they don't quite flow through our profit and loss statement, if you will, because they have a different treatment by accounting policies and by accounting procedures that we have. So that's really the difference. But in our case, they're actually fairly close. But people always think of them as the same, and they're not the same. So there could be, we have one reserve we have one item that we received $190,000 for a grant for, some equipment, and it's sitting there and it's restricted money, and so we can't use that money, so it doesn't fall into our reserve. So that's why we just kind of wanted to go into a real quick discussion. It's very difficult to understand for a lot of people, but that's just kind of the brief summary of that.
Rudy, are you saying that you keep all of the cash or the credits in one reserve, or is there a reserve for each fund?
Each fund has its own reserve.
Okay.
We have pooled cash, and that's allocated out to each individual fund based upon, where they are, but we have a pooled cash account that we use for investment purposes.
As you're
But-
saying, in the general fund, sometimes there are subventions from the state of California or a grant which is earmarked to do something specifically with.
Right.
And so it's not
It's not
truly general fund.
Correctly, it's not spendable by general fund, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. Moving on. So the task for the city council, obviously the council is being asked to adopt a balanced budget. We cannot be like the federal government and adopt a budget that is not balanced. And we also need to adopt a budget by June 30th of this year, as the current one will expire on June 30th. In terms of the budget calendar, May 23rd tonight is the initial budget presentation. You'll also be receiving requests, as I mentioned, from members of the community. 2 weeks from tonight, we have a budget workshop scheduled as a special meeting. That's Tuesday, June 6th at 6 p.m. That is just a budget workshop meeting. It's not part of a regular meeting. There's no other items currently planned to be on the agenda. So the idea would be to go through in whatever level of detail is desired by the council, and take your comments and questions and thoughts. And then, assuming that that gets us through where we need to be, we would come back on June 13th with another budget workshop at 6 o'clock prior to the regular meeting. Hopefully at that point, we would be coming back and addressing any of the comments, concerns, or changes that were addressed by the council at the June 6th workshop. And then at the regular meeting on June 13th, we have a public hearing scheduled. We do hold a public hearing as part of the budget adoption process. And if council is not ready at that point to adopt a budget, we also have June 27th, where we could put it on for the regular meeting. And of course, at that point, we would be recommending that the council take some action to adopt a budget. Of course, council can always amend its budget at any point in the year. Obviously, it would need to be on the agenda and for open discussion, but there's nothing that would prevent the council from adopting a budget in June, effective July 1st, and then making changes to that throughout the year. That is my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? If not, I have some cards here from the public, so let's, I have one from Severo. You out there? Oh, there you are.
Good evening, Mayor Johnson, City Council members, and staff. This evening, I come wearing two hats. And I'm first going to start off with the museum. I sit on the board as a board member, and I'm asking you to consider giving us the requested amount that we have been asking for quite a bit of a few years. And I think it's extremely important to realize that, first off, the building there is city-owned. So there's, I think, an interest there in providing funds to keep that building operating. And secondly is that museum is an asset to this community because it talks about our history. It preserves and promotes not just history but our art. And just a quick anecdote, just this last year, one of the programs that the museum put was inviting elementary schools. And one of my daughters got the opportunity to go, and she was just excited, and I asked her how it went. She said she learned a lot and that she would want to go again. So it impacts us in a positive way. So I would ask you guys to consider giving the amount that we're asking for. Now I'll remove that hat and I'll put the second hat on, which is the Green Coalition, which is another, in my opinion, extremely important organization in this community, not just the city, but this valley, because we do a lot of services that promotes anything from energy, renewables to water education, and there's a lot of programs. There's a packet that you receive put on by executive director, just like the museum, that explains just some of the programs that we offer to the community and that we promoted last year. And I think it's extremely important to note that water is a big issue there at the Green Coalition. We have been working with council members in the past about education, and I think it's extremely important. Even though we got some water, it have to be promoting sustainable conservation techniques, education, et cetera. And also, we did put a pitch on there for the community garden. I know that's been a hot issue, but I think that there's opportunity there to really revive that area. And we've worked hard to try to get matching funds to help that area, and we would love to work with the city in terms of being able to make that area usable and in a positive way. So I urge you to think strongly about supporting both of those organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Severo. Is it, again, the last name, is it Van Light? Betsy Van Light? Come on down. Oh, that's right, it wouldn't be Van Light.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name's Betsy Van Light. I've lived in Ojai for a few months now. I moved here to be closer to my parents, who've been here for quite a number of years. And I came out tonight because I wanted to speak in favor of the Green Coalition's proposal for the community gardens. And to put it in context, from 1990 until recently, I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So that's a real desert community. 9 inches of rain is typical for us. But when I got there in 1990, they were still planting lawns. Everyone was trying to grow things that required lots of water. And we were told that the aquifer under Albuquerque would last forever. It was endless. Well, that didn't turn out to be true. And so I was involved over a number of years helping make the transition with water conservation and really better ways of growing plants and making a city beautiful in a sustainable way. The thing I learned along the way is that the best strategies seem to be the ones that build community involvement. And so doing something like a demonstration garden and a community garden, it brings people together. They learn together. They're doing it because they want to, because they're creating something lovely, not because they're being told they have to do mandatory restrictions. And in the process, you build community, you learn together, and you really create a more vibrant community on a lot of different levels. So it seems like such a small type of proposal and project, but I think it could be really big. And walking around there actually earlier this evening, there's garbage and there were people sleeping and it's right here in the heart of town. So I would strongly support putting a little bit of funding into something that I think could really build a beautiful, vibrant community that knew about water and plants and was able to grow in a lot of different ways. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak.
Okay, thank you, Betsy, and welcome. I'm glad you came here. Bob Daddy.
Mayor, Council, thank you. I would request that you consider altering your schedule for the budget. I see we have a lot of Tuesday nights in there. I think we need a Saturday or two. When people can't make it at this time, they just can't make it at this time. We have people with families, other issues, getting off of work, not being here. And this is getting to be pretty important. So if you can do a Saturday in between your Tuesday, then Saturday, then Tuesday meeting, you can get a lot more people. And when you go to do the budget, I wish you folks would unveil something, at least for me. If somebody were to say, hey, Bob, what are the 5 things that the city council is going to accomplish the rest of the year? I wouldn't have a guess. If they said, hey, Bob, what are the 5 things that are the most important thing that the council determines to be something necessary of their attention, whether it's immediate attention or whether it is in a long-term list? I've yet to have anybody tell me what that is, and I couldn't say that I actually know what the council understands to be our biggest challenges and what challenge that are big challenges that we can solve quickly. So I know we've solved some things. I've been involved in a number of things in this community. I was delighted and saddened to go to the Park and Rec meeting. Actually, I was frustrated and irritated. We've done a great job. Greg Grant, Civic Association, the rec people have done a great job really getting us a fantastic facility. We got a great bathroom there. We've got great eating area. But around 6 or 7 years ago, there was a request for an outdoor basketball court, just a slab of concrete. 6 years later, we can't even get consensus to pass the general plan for the rec department. Now, the rec department is somebody that has $500,000 worth of receipts. If you look into the budget, they bring in $500,000. And I would think that by bringing in $500,000 and expanding those facilities for children, if the adults can play tennis at night, the adults can play softball at night, having a couple of small half courts with lights for the kids, and allowing us to go out and get grants and participation like we've done on other recreation facilities is something I would like to see this council champion and propose, because it's not coming out of the rec department. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Brian Akins?
Hello, Mayor. Hello, Council. I'm Brian Akins. I'm the treasurer of the Ojai Valley Museum. I'm here on my annual quest to come before you. Earlier this evening, I passed out an updated chart. This is updated with the April financials. The one I gave to Rudy 15 days ago was only through March. If you do meet on the 27th, I can tell you that we will give you the May financials, but if you don't, well, we'll give them to you anyway if you have a question. So, things I want to, just kind of a real quick history. About 4 years ago, we came before the council. We did our preparation in coming before the council and in supporting the request we made, which was, I think at that time, $50,000. I presented a sheet that was very similar to this one that basically showed what we needed the money for. Okay, and the council agreed to give us $50,000. They didn't put limitations on it, but we internally decided to be accountable to the money we asked for and to continue to do this chart. We review this information in our finance committee meeting, the Museum Information Finance Committee meeting in depth. Councilman Wyrick knows that. Councilman Severo, former Councilman Severo, is now hearing me drone on in meetings about this. So we do watch the money that you give us. We spread it out. We don't go out on a spending spree when we get that check. It's just not the way I function. Maybe I do at home, but not with your money. So that's why I have a wife. We met today in our finance committee meeting. They wanted you to see 2 numbers on this chart. So that's why I put a bold box around it, and then I put dashes with an arrow so you could see those 2 numbers. So what we did, we have April. We took an average of the first 10 months. The average spending for the first 10 months was $5,240.03. And so I added that in for the months of May and June to get a total projection for the end of the year of $62,880.38. Last year we came to you, we asked for additional funding for 3 different items. They were the Ojai Centennial, the cultural artifacts, and for family and students. So down at the bottom, you'll see those 3 items. You'll see when we spent that money, and you'll see off to the right that there's 2 items, 2 amounts in May, one for cultural artifacts and one for families and students. You'll see an asterisk next to that because that's just an estimate right at the moment. We are trying to get those numbers finalized and approved. The other thing we're asking for is we're asking for $10,000. That is for essentially a hardwire backbone for the museum. It will either come in from Roger Conrad's from the west if we stay with AT&T, or it'll come in from the east if we go to with Spectrum. That will be a hardwire that will go all the way through the museum, going through there's 4 commercial-grade internet Wi-Fi broadcasters that are associated with that. Right now, if you go to the front desk and you try to bring up your phone, you have to plug it in, you have to dial a phone number, and then you have to put it in the thing, because that's about how fast the internet is up that front desk. It's back in dial-up speed. So we're trying to improve that, trying to do communications throughout the building. Again, it's a hardwire. We have 3 security cameras that will be hooked to that. They will be powered through the powered hardwire. So we'll have internet. We have cameras. Will be on one on the front, 2 on the back. We did a quote with BitVision for all of this. That quote came out to $10,473.82. We just met with a third-party person who volunteered to come and oversee our quotes, and so he gave us some ideas on maybe to improve our cameras a little bit better. He has some experience at that, and maybe lower our commercial-grade broadcasters for the Wi-Fi. Still think we'll come in at about $10,000 for that. So again, our request is for $60,000 for operating fund support, and for $10,000 for putting in that backbone that goes all the way through the museum. Just so you know, we plan to have 3 channels. One of those channels will be available for the public that's there. We had a wife and husband came in. The wife was not interested. The husband was interested in everything we had. She asked, can I sit and check my mail? And we said, yeah, if you go over to Caro's, because, ours doesn't work. It's embarrassing. So we'll have one for that. We'll have one for people like, board members, and then we'll have one for the front area so that they have full access. Again, trying to limit the exposure of the museum, but also provide benefits to the people that come in and see us.
I understand the last part of what you said about 3 channels.
So Susan, we have, basically you have 3 lines coming in. Each of them have a password. On this line, it'll be the public. They'll basically only be able to get to the internet. The second one is I come into a board meeting, I need to look up some kind of data, I pop up my phone.
now.
Okay, and then the third one is for the staff.
Okay, thank you, now I understand.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, Brian.
Great, thank you.
Wendy?
Good
Double
evening.
team.
Wendy Barker, Director of the Museum. Thank you all for your current support, your past support, and we hope it continues. I just am going to be very brief and say we're having a great year. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary. We're celebrating the city's 100th centennial. We've been working, excuse me, with the Art Commission to highlight the municipal art collection. I think that's going really well. We've expanded activities for students and families. Just Saturday, we had a Family Fun Day. Today, this morning, we hosted 60 students from Topa Topa Elementary. So we're working on all of these things to increase our visibility in the community and to be better resource for them. So we appreciate your support and look forward again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Heather, Mana?
Hi, good evening. I'm Heather Mohan Gibbons. I've lived in Ojai for 7 years, and I'm here wearing my hat as a board member of the Green Coalition as well as the community garden manager. So I'm managing the community garden there out in Help of Ojai for about 1.5 years, and I've spent the last solid year learning about community gardens and how they can function best. And that included going to Denver for this national conference, and I learned that there are some really critical things that a community garden needs. One that the current Help of Ojai property does not have is proximity to its people. The location here is in the heart of the city and very close to the people. So that's one really great advantage that I see from this location. And the the goal of that kind of revitalizing the area is, I think Betsy said it best. I couldn't really beat anything she said. It's lovely. She's a community member here that I just stumbled upon. So there are a lot of people like Betsy that I've been finding that want the area behind City Hall revitalized. And if we can help support that effort and help, I mean, I'm already managing the community garden. I'm putting in probably 8 to 10 hours a week volunteering in addition to my board member responsibilities. So I'm very committed to engaging people in the community to learn more about water-wise gardening. As in the Southwest, we have places that get a lot less water than we do, and they can still be self-reliant, still growing food, still engaging their children, educational opportunities, and all of this. So yeah, the location on, I guess I just wanted to point on, the location here is on par with other gardens that are successful at that conference in Denver. There are some very specific things that make a garden or landscape area more successful. That is centrally located, which I think this fits. Support from a government entity. Visible from passerbys. There isn't anyone that's going to stumble upon the community garden out at Help of Ojai. And in a natural setting, which, I mean, this is a beautiful piece of property back here. And I just feel it's time to revitalize that. I'll end with just a few benefits to the community of revitalizing this property. It would be a source of pride for the community rather than what we find there sometimes at night. Active engagement with nature. This could really generate a service of volunteerism for the community. Again, right now, I get a lot of requests for people that either want to volunteer or become a member out at Help of Ojai, but it's too far. A lot of people want to ride their bike. It's just too far, especially on a hot day. It's just not practical. So that's been a limitation that I've had. It would embed a message of sustainability within our community. Be a source of self-expression. There's a community member in town who's working on different like fog nets and sculpture things. That could absolutely be something that we could highlight in the park. Educational opportunities for school groups. We're already doing this out at Help of Ojai. That would simply transfer here. And lastly, demonstration of that thoughtful landscaping, regenerative land management, which you already have details in the report, but really to be an example not just for Ojai, but also other cities in Ventura, as well as the state. I don't think we need to keep it within our city boundaries. I think we could go really big and be an example. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
A quick question for Heather?
Yeah, question.
Quick question. I assume everything you just went through is going to be in the report?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Most of it is, yeah.
Okay. And number two, are we looking at a joint application for funds between Help of Ojai and the Green Coalition on this project, or not?
That's a great question. Actually, Russell Sidney could probably answer that best. Our executive director. We do have funds in hand. We've raised $5,000 from Patagonia that can be used, and we're applying for other grants as well.
It just sounds like a natural partnership. I just wanted to raise the issue.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, here's Russell.
Thank you. I feel like I should do a soft shoe shuffle or something. Mayor, council members, thank you so much for your ongoing support and also for the opportunity to speak. We're here to request that you continue to support the Ojai Valley Green Coalition with a funding request to continue our work and our shared interest in advancing green, sustainable, and resilient Ojai Valley. I think at this point, most of you are pretty familiar with the work that we've been doing, and we've got a summary of it in the request. So keeping that work going is, of course, one of our top priorities. And I think you'll find that we have produced some very strong results on a very small budget. And part of that is because of the additional resources we bring in. We bring in outside grants. We have wonderful volunteers that we're truly appreciative of that come from all over our community. And of course, our community contributes financially as well through our membership drives. So one of the other things that's coming up, obviously, is this community garden, and a number of you have actually initiated that by talking to us. So we've come up with a plan, and hopefully that plan will be one that you'll find interesting, in part because it has a lot of different elements. It addresses a lot of the concerns that we have, and it also is one where we can bring in additional funding. Heather mentioned the Patagonia Fund. We have that on hand. We've submitted requests to the Ojai Women's Fund and requests to Lowe's to contribute to this effort. I'll have to contemplate the issue of, to the extent that Help of Ojai would have a role in this, but since they are here too, that becomes a possibility. So thank you for that thought. So this is part of our effort in the area of our water security concerns. And we also are looking at shifting that out of the dealing with the drought from the crisis standpoint into creating a better view of what it means to create water security and conservation with more of a long-term view now that we have received a little bit of rain, but we don't know what's going to happen next year. I think that Heather and Betsy have done a really good job of describing what we want to do, and the three asks include a minimum cost lease, some modest increase in our funding to help get this rolling, and considering tying capital improvement funds to the project so that if we bring in money from the outside, there would be the opportunity for the city to encourage that with the application of the capital improvement funds on appropriate projects that would be approved through the city. So we've been getting a support at the $50,000 level. We're asking for a modest $5,000 increase in that so that we can start the work on the garden, as well as keeping our existing programs in place and doing the work that we've been fortunate enough to provide the service for the community. So I got a red light. And thank you for your time.
Mayor, I have a question.
Thank you, Russ. We have a question for you.
Russ, before you sit down, I just wanted to go over our numbers here. I'm seeing on the demonstration community garden, first of all, I'll speak for myself, but I know I'm going to speak for every council person up here, that someone actually taking over the garden space in the back of City Hall and turning it into something that this community can be proud of is something that we've all thought about, we all wished for, and I'm proud to say thank you for championing it for the community. Now, let's talk some money here. So we funded you in the past at $50,000. I'm seeing that you want $5,000 more. And then on the second page, I see something that the amount of $20,000 would provide basic matching funds for other grants. So are you asking for an additional 20 on top of the 50 we give you, the 5 more you're requesting in the general 50, and then 20,000 more for matching funds for other?
The idea behind the 20,000 is that if we do negotiate a grant, we would like to be able to say that the city would provide funding to expand the project and encourage the grantee to participate.
Okay.
So those monies would only be something that we would look to request when they become part of bringing in outside funds.
Okay, then the other thing I'm seeing on here too, that you're requesting some CIP funds of $7,000 for some fencing. Is that what I'm reading into this too?
Where do you see that?
I think I'm on the same page here.
Oh,
7, for example, application
yeah,
funds from
that's
Lowe's.
that's an example. We have a $25,000 request to Lowe's, which includes security fences and fences to create secure places for children to play. So that's clearly a capital improvement element for the city. And then if the capital improvement funds were to be considered as being available as a matching fund to that, we could then expand the scope of that work, include it as part of that overall project. And in that example, the thing that comes to mind would be the renewal of the paths out there. We would need to create new paths, and the paths that are there need a lot of work. So if there was $7,000 that the city put up as matching funds towards adding the paths that would go with the fences, then it becomes a larger project, and it encourages Lowe's to participate.
Okay, did everyone understand that? So the 7,000, I guess, is coming out of the 20,000?
Yes,
Okay.
Provided you feel it's suitable.
And the 20,000 you're seeing is some type of a matching grant funding source or something out of our CIP?
The 25,000 is the level of request we've got in for Lowe's. So if at the end of this budget process, we can inform Lowe's that the city is willing to support this effort by assigning capital improvement funds to as matching funds to encourage their participation, then they provide the 25 grand. As we move through the project, we would submit requests to cover the additional costs that we would identify, in that process as part of the capital improvement effort that we would be putting forward.
Okay.
That make sense? So out of the 20, now you got 13 left, we can do two,
Right,
three
up
more.
to $20,000. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
if
hearing.
we, just, let's get the ball rolling, let's get some people to bring some money in, and let's show that the city's serious in supporting that effort, so,
Okay, thank you, Russell.
thank you.
Okay, Bill Miley.
For the record, my name is Bill Miley. I have a few clarifying questions I'd like to ask about the budget. Under revenue from other agencies, motor vehicle in lieu funds of $705,980. My question is, where does the state get this money?
What, vehicle license fees?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we get the money.
It didn't say, it says vehicle in lieu money. Does it come strictly from the license fees, or is it gasoline tax?
Yeah, no, the way, the state, it's not technically a vehicle license fee because they changed the mechanism at the state level a few years ago. So it's now, technically, it is a vehicle in lieu of VLF, because it's not a strict VLF, but it does come from the state, and it's from the license fees of the vehicles, yes.
Okay, so it's pretty secure.
Yes.
Okay. Next question is, under other revenues, housing loan recipients, what's that? 231,575. Housing loan?
What that is that the $231,000, that's actually a reimbursement to the city for the money, some of the monies that were loaned to the redevelopment agency over the years. There's approximately $3.5 million outstanding on that loan, and that's just an annual installment of that payment from the state.
And who pays it?
The state, well, it comes from the property taxes, comes from the county of Ventura, and it's approved by the State Department of Finance, and it comes from the property taxes that
Is it pretty secure until the loan's paid off?
Yes.
It's like 5 years?
No, it's going to be a few more years than that.
Good.
So, yeah.
Okay. What's COPS funding? 120,000.
That's a special grant that the police have received for, what is their exact program with that? I
believe those are federal monies, and they are used to pay for special enforcement, overtime. I don't have the list in front of me right here, but we could get it to you.
Yeah, and
Is that pretty secure, or do you
yes.
have to get it?
Yeah, and that's granted every year. That's already been approved.
Okay. Under expenditures, I see $81,000 for a school resource officer. I thought I heard the chief of police say they didn't have one.
We don't have a school resource officer. Unfortunately, some of our accounts have old names on them, but these are programs in the community that the police are using. I'd have to look at the actual what it is, but we don't currently have a resource officer.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Under the planning department, for salaries in 16-17, 181,000, and 17-18, 330,000. Is that because we're hiring another person full-time?
Well, what we actually, in that department, we did add a person full-time that was we had a part-time building and planning technician in prior years, and we added a full-time position in this current fiscal year, and so that number's gone up.
Good, okay. And the last one is under the general ledger. It says a transient rental issue, $19,235. Is that for enforcement? Transient rental issues under general ledger. I mean, I think that's good if we are using it.
We are putting $30,000 for short-term rental enforcement issues.
Perfect.
Yeah,
That's great.
So we do have $30,000 in the budget right now
Okay,
for short-term.
That's all, thanks.
I would add only one thing to that, Bill. When how did you phrase that? Are they reasonably secure? Was that your phrase? I don't want to be overly pessimistic, but experience has told us, as the city manager mentioned, when the state of California gets into trouble because the feds squeeze them, guess who gets squeezed next? And those revenues you mentioned have in the past been dramatically affected, unfortunately. But right now, I think if you're just calculating the odds, it looks like we're okay at least for the coming year, as far as we know, so.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Are we scheduled to end this first preliminary budget session a few minutes before 7 or 7 o'clock?
Right,
Okay,
yeah.
so is this our last opportunity to question the museum? And then do we expect that in subsequent sessions, there's going to be other people coming forward?
I don't think it's the last opportunity, but.
No, but I mean, they're here now to answer questions.
You have a question.
I have a
You're-
question.
Okay,
yeah.
what's
Okay.
the question?
No, okay. Well, first of all, I want to tell you, if you increase your font size, your chances of any of approval will be greater. This really small font, whoever did that, I can't
Brian.
read it, but I'm going to try without my glasses. So my question is this, and this may be a future agenda item. You have miscellaneous visitor information expense, and all you have spent in the last 6 months is, or whatever, longer than that, is $30 to promote visitors. I mean, how does that work when you contrast that with the Visitors Bureau down the street, and yours is the one on Ojai Avenue, and in my strong opinion, Ojai being a tourist destination needs a very visible, strong Visitors Bureau on Ojai Avenue that all these people wandering around can find. So that's my motivation for asking.
Okay, so much of the information that's in the visitor center, which we have, is provided by the entities within the communities, so we don't pay for that. They're happy to give that to us.
Okay.
There are some things that we print pretty much every 2 years, and we try to print enough for 2 years, so I'm thinking that you may be seeing something was printed in the last fiscal year.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about the expense. I'm just curious how they operate on $30 and,
It's
over
volunteers.
and volunteers.
We have volunteers and we
Yeah.
have free information. Things that we print to pass out are kind of, walking tour type things. Other than that, there's very, little funds that are spent in that.
Okay.
So
And
other
we are
than-
open 7 days a week, too.
You're open 7 days a week?
Right.
And the one down the street that gets all the money is open 5 days a week, not on weekends?
I'll
Okay.
refrain from
All right, just to
responding.
be clear.
So,
Okay.
So other than the size of the print, we commend you for a very frugal operation.
Thank you. I'm a spreadsheet guy, and the more on the page, the better.
Okay, we're getting really.
thank you. Brian, one last thing, it also sounds like Susie here wants to give you guys more money for that, so
Gladly. Come see us in the visitor center any
will.
day.
I
Okay?
will.
No, right, Brandy apparently is going to second it, I think. Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
No, but, yeah.
Okay, well, we will call this to a close, and then in about 5 minutes, we'll start the regular council meeting. Okay?